Welcome back to our Spring Boot tutorial series. In this video, we will implement JWT authentication, and using this one, we are going to secure our API. So first of all, what is JWT? That means JSON Web Token, and it is used to provide a secure way to handle authentication and ensure that only authorized user can access a specific resource. That means you can see we have so many APIs, and currently whenever we want to access the API, by default we are able to see this screen. Once user will enter the credential, then they can access REST API. So this is done by Spring Security. Now we are going to implement the JWT token. So anybody can call the REST API and they can get the data using the token. So this video we are going to split into two parts. First part, we are going to create a authentication controller. That place we will pass username and password. Once the credential is correct, then we'll try to send the JWT token. That means we are going to create the JWT token, and in the next video what we'll do, whatever token we'll get, and we'll try to apply on our REST APIs. So before accessing any API, we'll make sure without JWT token nobody can access the data. So let's start the first part of this video, and we are going to create one authentication controller. So let's create, go to your controller, new class, and you can give the class name as authentication controller and click on finish. Try to import the annotation as REST controller, and let's give the request mapping. And what we'll do in user controller, everybody is starting with API/user. Here we'll also start with /API, and let's try to create one REST API. So let's copy this create user post method. And here we are going to change name as authenticate. We are going to use the postman. In the postman, we'll try to access /API/authenticate. And here we are going to pass the username and password. So let's copy this name. And here, instead of sending user response, we are going to use response entity. For now, just put question mark. And what we are going to send in the request body. So as I told you, we are going to send username and password because we are saving all the details in our database. So you can see we have 3 users and we have also mentioned the role. So currently we require username and password. So what we can do, let's create a request body. So just go to your model and try to create one class. That class name we can say like authentication request. So let's give your username and password field. Use getter setter. So right click, source, generate getter and setter, select all. So using this class, we are going to accept the request from the postman. So how this API look like in the postman? Let's try to see. So the API will be look like localhost 800/API/authenticate. And in the request body, we are going to pass username and password. So what we can do, just go and select raw. JSON is fine. Now we need to pass the username and password. So just give your username, user true, and password is here, password true. This is the credential we have used earlier. I hope I am entering the correct credential. So now what will be happen when we'll click send, our requirement is like it will go to this API, and from this API, first of all, we are going to do the authentication process, and after that, we'll try to return the JWT token. So you can remove this one. So let's try to use try and catch here. So first of all, we have to do authentication. So for that, we have to use authentication manager class. It will come from the Spring Framework Security, and it contains one authenticate function. In that one, we'll try to pass our user credential. So if the credential is correct, automatically it will execute that line. So first of all, let's try to import that class. So what you can do, just use here auto wire annotation, private authentication manager. So now we are going to use authentication manager dot authenticate. So here you can see inside that you have to pass one authentication. So what we can do, just use here new username, password, authentication token, and here we are going to pass the credential. So this request will contain the first of all username. So how we can get, just use get username, and the password we can get by get password. And if you want to know much more about this function, you can open this class. And here you can again go to inside any of the class. so you can understand how it is working, and they have all the documentation also, so you can easily try to understand. So now what we are doing, we are just using new username password authentication token, and this is a constructor. This constructor, what it will do, it will take the credential whatever we are passing, and after that Spring Security is going to play an important role. So just for now you can understand the credential is correct. So what will be happen, line number 25 will be execute properly, and now we have to find the user details, like which user is trying to access the data. So just use here final user detail class, and it is also coming from Spring Security code details. If you remember, we have one service class, and you can see in this service class we have one function load user by username. If you don't know, then try to watch our earlier video, you can understand why we are keeping. So for now you can understand we are going to pass the username, and with the help of this function we are going to get the detail of that user. So we have to auto wire this class also. So what you can do, just come use here auto wire notation. So now imagine we got the credential correct. Now we have to find the user, which user tried to access. So just use load user by username, and how you can get the username, we already have in the request dot get username. So this will contain the user details, and this is also coming from the Spring Security class. So if you go down, you can easily understand they have all the variable, password, username, is account expire or not, and so many details. So now let's try to return a simple message here. So what we can do, just use here return response entity dot okay, and I'm going to pass the message here like login success get username. So for now let's return null. So our controller is ready. What we are doing, inside this controller we are going to accept the request, and this request will be here username and password, and once we got the input, then we are going to pass that credential into authenticate function. So now we are going to use the Spring Security feature, and after that if the credential is correct, automatically line number 30 will be execute. Then in this line we are going to get the user detail by username, and finally we are passing one message like login success, and it will contain the username, and this username is coming from user detail class. So let's stop our server and try to see whether whatever we have done is correct or wrong. So stop the server and restart. So now you can see we are getting an error, and this error is coming from auto wire it's showing. And if you try to dig little bit deeper, you can see we are getting like considering defining a bin of type authentication manager in your configuration. That means we have to define our bin. So how we can do? So go to your config, and in this config you can see we already have one bin for security filter change, and similarly we have other bin also. So now we have to define one bin for authentication manager. So let's try to define one bin. Give here public authentication manager, and here we have to pass one class, that name is here authentication configuration, that will contain all the configuration related to Spring Security. So just use here authentication configuration. So now what we'll do, just use here return authentication configuration dot get authentication manager. That's it we have to do. So here we are creating one bin, that bin name is here authentication manager, and this is one class. That class is from Spring Security core, and using this one we can easily understand if authentication is correct, it will show successful, else we'll get an exception. You can save that security config. Now go to your controller and you can close other classes. So let's try to rerun. I hope this time everything will be fine. So you can see we are getting message like Spring Boot application started successful. So let's try to call that API. Now click on send. So here you can see we are getting message like method not allow, because we are calling here get method. And if you try to notice, here we have post method. So let's try to change that method type. Now let's call. Now we are getting error, and this error is showing forbidden. That means we don't have permission to access this API. So what you have to do, now you can go to security config. Now here we have to change this security change permission. Earlier in the CSRF we have said like please ignore this API, and if any API is coming from this one, that means give the permission, else try to do the authentication. So now we no need to use this one, we have to do the upgrade. So you can change as for your requirement. This is just for learning purpose, so I'm just going to change as for my requirement. So I'm not going to use anything here. For now, I'm just going to disable this CSRF. So you can see I'm getting a cross mark. That means this function has been deprecated, and you can try to check with the Spring document. So you'll understand like what you have to do. Now I need to say like if anything is coming from authenticate, that means we are going to give the permission. So just use here API and authenticate. So this authenticate means I'm talking about this post mapping here, and you can see here the request mapping on the top. It is showing /API/authenticate. So that's why we have given here API/authenticate. And after that, we are saying like if any other API is calling, try to do the authentication. That means without credential, they cannot access anything. So let's stop the server and try to rerun. So you can see we are getting message here, login successful. So our API is ready. That means using this API, we can easily check the user. Let's try to pass the wrong credential instead of 2, try to pass 4. So you can see we are getting nothing. That means it's just showing 200, but we are not getting any message. But if you try to see in this console, it is showing like failed to authenticate since password does not match stored value. So that part, what you can do for now, if you want, you can put in the catch and try to return one response entity like failed. So let's try to return that part also. And here try to use HTTP status dot unauthorized and use your body and try to pass the message like login failed. And if you want to pass some more detail, what you can do, just use here e.getMessage. Now no need to use this line because our code will never reach this point. Now let's stop your server and try to rerun. Let's try to call. So you can see we are getting message that login failed, and this message is coming from the Spring and it is showing like bad credential. And in case if you pass different user, what will be happen? Again, we'll get here bad credential. But if you notice in the console, we are getting message here like failed to find the user 23. So this is working fine. Now we have to implement JWT. So what will be happen once our credential is correct and we have user detail? With the help of user detail, we have to create a JWT token. So let's start JWT from here. So this is the GitHub of JWT, and you can see the title here. Currently the version is different. Maybe when you watch, the version will be changed. Now how we can import that? They have big documentation. So if you scroll down, they have mentioned here like what dependency you have to do. Just copy this line. Now you can stop your server. So go to your form.xml and try to paste it. So we have imported here 3 dependency, JSON Web Token. You can see, and this is containing artifact ID as API. This is implementation, and this is the JSON. These are the required dependency. Now we have to create a class. That class will be responsible to create the JWT token. So let's create one util class, new class, and here you can give the name as JWT util, and I can give the package name here as util. So this class will be responsible to create the JWT token. So if you scroll down, you can get way how you can create the JWT token. So this is a small line of code. If you want, you can directly copy paste and you can create it. But the problem is here, like you can see they have used their secret key, and how they are creating, they are just creating like during the build time. Like whenever you will run your application, it will work fine. You can get the JWT token, but the problem is like once the application is stopped, same access token, you cannot use it. So it can create confusion. So that's why I don't want to make mess here. So for now, I'm going to pass my static secret key. There are multiple ways to create. I'm not going to discuss in this video. Maybe in the future, I will try to cover in depth about JWT token. If you scroll, you can see how you can create the JWT token. So multiple ways are there. We are just going to follow a simple approach. So what we can do, first of all, we have to use a notation as component. We are going to treat this util class as component, and let's try to create one function, public string, and I can give the name here like generate token. And here we are going to pass the username. That means that access token will be related to that user. So just use a string username. Now what you can do, just use this one, a string JWT. So you have to import this one. You can import this class And after that, just use your subject. So if you are using earlier version, it was get subject. Now it is replaced with subject. So in the subject, you can pass your username. And after that, when you have issue that access token, so for now, just use your new date because we have to put the expiration time also. Now import this one. Try to import from java.util. Depend on you, like till which level you want to secure or what are the things you have to pass. So I'm just going to pass basic detail and expiration date here. What we can do, just try to pass the expiry date, whatever time we have, plus 10 hours. So again, what you have to do, just use a new date. And inside the new date, we have to extend the current time. So in the new date, we have to add another 10 hours. So what you can do, just use here system.current time in millisecond. And after that, just try to use here 1000 into 60 into 60, and for how many hours? So we have to increase for 10 hours. So currently I am getting the current time, and in that current time I'm adding 10 hour of millisecond. So let's try to stop it here. We are not going to pass our secret key for now. So you can see we are getting error like we have to change the type. So just click this one. Now it will change here like JWT builder. So let's try to return JWT.compact. And I want to see what will be happen here. For now, I'm just passing here username and issue at and expiration time. Go back to our main class. Before that, copy this one. Go to your authentication controller and try to import that class. Just use here a string JWT, and now we have to use our function generate token, and here we have to pass the username. So how you can pass? Just use here user details dot get username. You can add JWT token and stop your server and restart. So we have to pass the correct credential first of all. So you can see we are able to get the JWT token. But is it secure? Is it good way? No, it is not good way. We have to pass our secret key. There are multiple way to pass. You can see they are using signing with, and here they are passing the signing key. For now, I'm going to pass my static key. So what you can do, again, you can go to that JWT util class, and after that, just use here sign in with. So here, multiple way you can do. Either you can pass your key or you can pass your signature algorithm and secret key. So first of all, we have to pass our algorithm. What we can do, just use a signature algorithm dot HS256. Now we have to pass the key. So you can open this one and you can pass here base 64 encoded secret key. So for now, what I will do, I will define one secret key. So let's define private static final string. My secret key is here hello. So there are multiple way. Either you can pass a string or you can pass their secret key. So if you open this one, you can understand what I'm saying here. So you can see they have so many ways. So I'm going to use another level of secure way. That means I will try to pass your secret key. Either you can try to go on the basis of this build. Another way is like, let's create a function. That function will return the secret key. So I'm just going to copy paste one function. Then I will explain you. So this is one small function. Here I'm going to get the secret key value, whatever we are passing, like hello. Then I'm changing it to byte. Then that byte I am just getting as a encoded one. And after that, I'm trying to generate one secret key using my static word, that password. And let's try to import that one. They have so many ways to create the key. Whatever approach you want, you can just follow that one. Now I will expect like this will be more secure. Stop your server and restart. So you can see the length has been increased, and if you copy this one, just search JSON Web Token, open this one. So let's try to paste our JWT token, and here you can see we have used algorithm as HS256, and these are the details we have passed. So subject user to issue at expiration time. So you can see all the details. If you want, you can verify this one. So JWT token we have created successful, but we have to do some small level of code changes. So instead of returning a login success and JWT token, let's create a response class, and that will return the perfect JWT response. So let's create class authentication response, and here either I will return JWT token or error. Let's create getter and setter. Create on constructor. So our authentication response class is ready. So this class we are going to respond two things, either JWT token or error. That means definitely one variable will contain the data. Copy this class, close other class. Now let's change as authentication response return type. So let's change the response also. New authentication response. And here we have to pass JWT token and error will be here null. Similarly, when we'll get an error, what we can do, instead of JWT token, we'll just return null. And in the error, you can send like invalid username or password. Or if you want more detail, just use here e.get message. Let's stop this server and again restart. So you can see if the credential is correct, JWT variable will contain token, else and error will be here null. But in case if I pass wrong password, what will be happen? You can see I'm not getting JWT token and I am getting one message like invalid username or password, and this message bad credential I'm getting from Spring. So this is the first part. In this first part, what we did, we have created one authentication API and we have done the login, and once the login was successful, then we created the access token, and after that we have sent that access token in the response. So now what we'll do in the next part of this video, whatever API we have like /API/user, and when we try to get all the user detail, on that time we'll try to pass the JWT token. So whatever the API we have, we'll try to see like whether it's working or not, and we have to make sure none of the API will be work without JWT token except authenticate API. So see you in next video.